Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are talking about the loneliness epidemic for men. This has been talked about a lot, especially on social media. So I want to talk about the real reasons why guys are lonely today, because we've heard a lot of opinions, especially on TikTok, and I've come across so many stitches where women are just saying that it's the consequences that men are facing for treating women poorly. First of all, I don't believe this, but this demonstrates the mindset of women believing that they are a man's everything or that they should be a man's everything. And I just think that it's interesting that a lot of women are saying that men just need to learn how to be more emotionally available and adapt and be able to be vulnerable and open up about their emotions and feelings. But I don't think it's that simple. I don't think that it falls all on men's laps as far as the resolution. So today we are going over the 5 real reasons why men are lonely and suffering in this loneliness epidemic. Before we get started, guys, please remember to like the video and please comment if you agree or disagree with any of what I say. Number 1, the first point I want to make is that both genders are in this loneliness epidemic. I think it's very interesting how this has been pushed all on men. I do think that it has impacted men more, and that is because of the other reasons that we'll go through. But ladies, it's not just a problem for men. It's literally happening to both men and women. And the reason for that takes us into number 2. Reason number 2 is that there's been less real in-person socializing ever since COVID. And the difference here that this highlights is between men and women. Women will stay in contact and just call their female friends and catch up with them. Whereas men don't typically do that. They don't reach out with a phone call and talk on the phone for 20 minutes to their best guy friend. Men will typically bond and maintain friendships by spending time together and actually doing something side by side. It's also why guys won't usually just have their guy friends over to the house to hang out unless they're like doing something, they're watching a game. Otherwise, they're leaving the house and they're going golfing or they're going biking or they're doing some project outside the house or they're fixing up a car together. Whatever it is, men are typically doing things and that is how they bond. Now, ever since COVID, there's been less opportunity for that, right? Because there had to be that social distancing. And that's when a lot of men got out of the routine of spending time together. A lot of men are also not going in person to work anymore. You know, they're working from home, which really decreases their social life. Number 3 is that men are going through a big transition right now from learning and living through toxic masculinity to healthy vulnerability. And this is where women can honestly give a lot more grace because women should be accepting and highly avoidable to shaming men for their feelings. And from what I have seen and heard is that a lot of women are not doing a good job at this and that men are getting shamed, or women are at least telling them after their man has cried in front of them that they feel differently now. You know, they're not seeing him in the same light. They see him differently just because he expressed an emotion that was other than anger. So this is very, very difficult for men to move forward into another relationship and to be able to express themselves emotionally like that without feeling like the same thing is going to happen. I just think that women need to be more understanding of this. Women definitely shouldn't deny that it happens because it happens. Like if you have a man standing in front of you telling you that this legit happened to him, you can't deny it. The other aspect of this that I see, especially with the red pill community, is that other men will hear these stories or they've gone through the experiences themselves and then they'll tell other men to also not express their feelings. Like, don't make this mistake, men, because this is what happened to me. And so it spreads this terrible messaging. I think that it is women's responsibility to be able to handle a man's emotions, especially when she's been saying that that's what she wants, right? Women want men that are more vulnerable, that are more emotionally there and willing to express other emotions than anger. Well, ladies, you can't mess up when they do it, right? You can't shame them. It's a very important point at which it can really impact a man's ability to do that into the future with you or with any other woman. Number four, there's been so many changes within a family dynamic of gender roles. So, back 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, it was very clear what was expected of men versus women. But today is very different in that there's no real set guidelines. There's still some relationships that will follow traditional gender roles, but I think a lot of them, a majority of them, are transitioning away from that, which means that men and women actually have to discuss in detail everything about a family dynamic, which is it's actually harder than just going into it knowing or assuming, because if you go into it assuming nowadays, it's probably going to be wrong, and you could create many difficult moments, many arguments, fights in regards to this. And this is not to say that women are not going through it or haven't been through it, because I think they are. I think that they're dealing themselves with splitting themselves from working to possibly being a mom. And a lot of women might have difficulty with letting go completely of household tasks in the way that they want it to be done, because they're also working, and so they're trying to split the workload, and men are trying to step in and do those things, but there can be difficulty, right? And the one that comes to mind is like when a man is trying to do the laundry, fold towels, but then he gets told that he didn't do it right, he didn't fold the laundry correctly. Like, we got to remember that there's been this change in gender roles, and that the woman inside the house is not the ruler of how household tasks are going to be achieved. So there has to be compromise. But I think that men are having a difficult time, really, because they're running into that resistance from women to just kind of let a man do things in the way that he wants things to be done in the household as well, if things are truly 50-50. And then you also have to be comfortable talking about every little detail of who's going to do what. And there shouldn't be this expectation right now. I think this happens quite frequently, where men are expected to do half of the inside tasks because, both people work. And I think that's very valid. But for some reason, you don't really hear very often about like the outside work being split, like the mowing and any kind of lawn care, or working on the car, getting oil changes, like the things that are more traditionally a man's role. You don't hear about that necessarily getting split up. So I think that that's where men are really running up against having a lot of expectations put on them, and they're just trying to work their way through it. But a lot of them are getting shamed. Like, they're getting shamed for not being good men, for not stepping up, for, not doing their fair share around the house. So I just think that a lot of times it's a bit harsh, and especially on social media. So I think, again, there could just be more grace given. And then the final one, I think this one is the most important one. Number 5 is that women are putting more and more responsibility on her man for being her all. I think that we've seen this shift in our culture over the last 10 to 20 years, where it's really all about the nuclear family, and there's not as much like outside support. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of families are moving across the country, away from their extended family where they have more of that support. And a lot of people are comfortable with that because they just see their nuclear family as all that they need. But what ends up happening is a lot of pressure, a lot more pressure gets put on the man. And we also see this on social media, that a man is expected to do X, Y, Z, and it's all things that used to be supported by like an entire extended family. So it's just recognizing that there has been this shift. And then what happens is that if a man is supposed to be a woman's all, and like her happiness is depending on him, first of all, that's a lot of pressure. And second of all, where does he have space to be the one that's faltering a little bit? There is none. He has to be the strength. He has to be the strong one, because there's no one else that he's relying on, because there's not that extended family. So it is a lot of pressure. And not that a lot of men can't handle that, because I think a lot can, but a lot of men then, because of the pressures of life and because everything is so time consuming, they just don't have time then to help build those outside relationships with friends, with family, maintaining those bonds where he does have little outlets of stress relief, and also even just being able to do things, right? Like going and golfing for a day. Like a lot of women would have a problem with that. If this is a dad to young children, like there's just no way, because well, she's not getting to do that. She's not getting to spend 3 or 4 hours out. But it's more complicated than that, because is she choosing that she doesn't want to do anything that's similar to him, or is she actually being told that she can't but he should be able to? Or is it that she has little other outlets that are a little bit more available to her, like just calling her girlfriend, and she feels like she gets that outlet? But again, going back to number 2, men don't really work the same way. They kind of have to go, and they have to be doing something. They have to be watching a game. They have to be fixing the car. They need to be doing some sport together. Like that's their outlet. So they need to have that time more readily available in like big chunks typically, compared to women. So these are the 5 things that I think are contributing to the loneliness epidemic for men. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, if you agree or disagree. Hopefully, this was a really different take. I really haven't heard anyone else have a similar take as mine that I spoke about today. So, hopefully, you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.